Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's edition of the Gamut Network. We are so excited to be back here for season 2. And I'm just so excited to have this amazing woman who happens to be Miss Vermont, USA, on the show today, because it's very important for us to bring perspective to not only people with disabilities, but also siblings or other members of the family or people that are just making amazing things for this community. And our guest today, Shannah, is certainly doing all of the above. So welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
So thrilled to have you. So Shannah, like we always start, I definitely want to give our audience a bit of background on your story, your relationship with your sister. So fill us in on that, please.
Yeah, I had a sister with cystic fibrosis. Unfortunately, she passed last year of the disease. And I also have another sister with a form of IDD that is a challenge for her to learn in specific ways. And watching both of them struggle with their unique challenges inspired me to not only become a cystic fibrosis advocate, but to create my blog, Uniquely Me, which focuses on confidence building in women with mental and physical differences. Now, my sister Jana, my sister who passed from CF, she struggled with her outward confidence. Unfortunately, the disease affected her physically, and for most of her life, she was very, very thin. And so she had a hard time finding clothes that fit. And that was very discouraging for her, unfortunately. And we really had to work together to keep her confidence built up. Now, my sister, Elizabeth, who has a form of, she has a form of short-term memory, and that really caused her to struggle socially and in the education arena as well. And sometimes she would also struggle with her outward appearance. And what's interesting is when people have different challenges, the challenges that we already face can seem bigger and more difficult for people who already struggle with unique challenges. And both of my sisters, they experienced that. And I watched them go through that, and we had to work through it together. And so that's why I created Uniquely Me, because I knew there were other women who were going through that, and I wanted to help them by sharing their story and by sharing, you know, the challenges we all faced. And I think it's made a great impact.
I agree. So there's so much there that I want to kind of go back and dig in a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
First of all, can you share with our audience IDD, what that stands for?
Yes, that's intellectual, intellectual.
I think
Disability.
Developmental disabilities.
Yes, intellectual development disabilities. Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Just because I like to educate
yeah, absolutely.
everyone watching, just so they know what we're speaking of. But so let's first start with Jana. Am I saying that properly?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Yes. So she passed at the age of 30. So you had 30 beautiful years of being her sister. What was her world like in terms of going to school or friends or anything like that? Just kind of fill in the blanks a little bit on
absolutely. Where do I begin? I mean, first of all, most of her schooling years she was homeschooled. All of us actually were homeschooled at one point. I had 4 siblings, now 3, now 2. Sorry, 3 siblings, now 2. There's 4 of us. But most of us, we were homeschooled almost all throughout the years, and she was definitely homeschooled. When she did go to school, she went to high school for a few years, and those were really difficult because people didn't really understand her struggle. They knew something was different. They knew that she had challenges, but they weren't sure what they were. And so socially, she did struggle, and people would make fun of her horribly. They would accuse her of smoking cigarettes because she was so thin, and she had a cough. If people don't know very much about cystic fibrosis, it causes an overproduction of mucus in somebody's system, in the lungs and in the digestive tract. And most CF patients have a chronic hacking cough, and so people would run away from her or cover their mouth, like they thought she was contagious. And it became very difficult, overwhelming for her. And so my mom ended up homeschooling her. And I just remember it being really hard for her. Fortunately, she did have a few really close friends. One of them I consider my other sister, because she is about 9 years older than me. And so is my sister, Jana. She was actually my sister's best friend. And we're still very, very close. So her name's Jess. And we call each other sisters just because she's been with us for a long time. But she had Jess and a couple of other really close friends. But other than that, people just didn't understand. It was hard.
And I think that's a really important piece that I just want to pause on for a second, because I hope that we're moving into a time in our life, in our society, that we're able to educate people a bit better
Yes.
on, what her story was. And
Right.
I think had there been that piece of education, hope, her experience in high school could have been different. And that is certainly something that I work on with my son, who is now almost 15, or I'm sorry, almost 16. And it sounds very similar in that, he, upon looking at him, you think maybe something off, but it's not as clear as being in a wheelchair or having a limb difference. But he is incredibly skinny. He doesn't run, things like that. But I'm really teaching him that he has to advocate for himself and be very clear and vocal about why he doesn't run, why he's so skinny, all of those things. Because once you dispel that curiosity, then there's nowhere else to go with that. And I think, if we are doing our job, I think that piece of educating, which it sounds a lot like what you are doing with your blog, Uniquely Me, is really bringing to the surface these pieces of being human and having differences, whether that's mental, physical, invisible. And I think hopefully your sister is smiling down, knowing the work that you are doing to help prevent another young woman out there from having a negative experience in school. So, and now your other sister, Liz, tell me a little bit about her, life as an adolescent or growing up. Was it similar?
Very similar. She struggled heavily socially because, again, if you were to see her, interact with her for a few minutes, you wouldn't really be able to tell that she has those unique challenges. But if you spent, more time with her, it might come out a little bit more in just ways that she doesn't really think about necessarily, but people begin to pick up on it. And again, it's that they don't understand, especially because it's not always obvious. And the more she interacts with people, and I would say not so much now, she's really grown. Once she realized what her challenges were, she began to address them. And that's what I bring out in Uniquely Me, is that we are more powerful than what we think. And when she really discovered what her challenges were, she began to focus on them and work on them. And of course, we all have our own situations and difficulties that we all have to go through, but she really worked hard on the things that kept her from achieving the goals that she wanted to achieve. And she's a wonderful success story, but when she was younger, she didn't fully understand her own diagnosis. And because of that, it made it even more difficult. And especially high school, it was difficult because even people who were supposed to be her aide they struggled with understanding her. And a lot of the time she was told, you'll never do this, you'll never do that, you'll never be able to achieve this. And I'm happy to say she now has an associate's degree in liberal arts. She went to college and she has a degree now. And I think that speaks volumes to what we can accomplish when we have the right support and when we understand what our challenges are.
Very well said, and very true. I think support is the key ingredient.
Yes.
And kind of blocking out the you'll never. I
Yes.
don't understand why anybody would ever put something like that into existence.
Right.
I do want to, before we get into your work as Miss Vermont, I'm going to ask a slightly, I think, difficult and very personal question in terms of being the sibling of.
Yes.
I at least find with my own family that sometimes it's very hard for my daughter and my other son, in terms of being the sibling of Oliver, who is the one with a disability, because my husband and I naturally have to give him more attention, good and bad.
Yep.
Did you have any challenges with that growing up? And if so, maybe if you have advice for other siblings out there on how to manage through that, because it's very difficult.
Yes. I never once, and I'm completely honest about this, 100% honesty, I never once felt like I was neglected, that I did not get enough attention. First of all, my parents are incredible parents. They worked very hard to ensure that we all felt included and taken care of, and they would constantly reassure us that they loved us all the same, and we saw the actions that went along with that. Now, one of the ways that I kept from feeling like I was neglected was getting involved in my siblings' health and taking care of them. My sister Jana, I began taking care of her, or helping to take care of her at the age of 15. Anything that she needed medical wise that I had the ability to give, helping her to take certain supplements, buying things at the store for her, getting her, anything she needed, making meals for her. There actually was a time when she was in California for something, and she went into an episode, and unfortunately she had a stroke while she was there, and my father and I flew out and took care of her for 2 weeks at that hospital because she was actually there alone. And the interesting thing about CF is CF patients can go through a period where they're actually okay. Like, they can manage their symptoms. They can, sorry, my crown is falling. They can.
It was beautiful. I was getting nervous it was going to fall off. And then
I know, I was like, why is it not? But anyway, so she was there alone because there are times when they can pretty much be okay and be self-sufficient. But then again, they can go into episodes where they completely need somebody. And she unfortunately had a stroke and her whole right side was paralyzed. And we had to go and help take care of her. And I remember helping dress her, helping her, use the restroom, all these things. And that's one of the ways you can combat feeling like you're being neglected or you're not getting enough attention, is getting involved in the care of your siblings.
Great advice. I love that. And I think that's really, really appropriate. And I think that's sage words. So tell us a little bit about being Miss Vermont and how you got involved in that.
Yeah, actually it actually revolves around my sister Jana. So I competed as a teen in 2012, and I knew nothing about pageantry, nothing about the pageant world. I was like, you know what, let's just do it. And because I didn't know anything about it, there's a lot more preparation that goes into pageantry than most people realize. And I didn't know that. So unfortunately, I didn't place, I didn't, do very well, which, honestly, looking back, I'm glad, because I wasn't really ready for the title anyway. But back then, I was very heartbroken. I was devastated. And to me, it was like somebody was saying I wasn't good enough, but that's not what it was at all. However, my sister Jana stepped in, and I remember the pageant was over. We were still at the conference center, and she pulled me into an embrace. this was back when she was younger. She was a little bit healthier when she was younger. And she pulled me into her embrace and said to me, Shannah, do not give up on this. Don't allow how you're feeling right now to dictate whether or not you do this again. Because I was like, I'm never doing this again. Like, this is too much, this and that and the other thing. And she was like, okay, breathe. Because when I saw you up there, I saw a winner. I saw a young woman with potential. Take the time to prepare, understand why you want to win, and come back and do it again. Now, as I mentioned before, I became heavily involved in her care. So that took over most of the years, you know, of my teenage years and my life up until she passed. And so when she passed, I decided to keep my promise to compete again. And I competed for the Miss division because I had aged out of the teen division. And I went in with her being my why. And I walked away with the title. And I decided to use the title to promote cystic fibrosis and the challenges that people with mental and physical differences face. And the challenges we all face, you know, we're all human, and it's just that our challenges and our differences vary. That doesn't mean that any of us have any less value.
Beautiful. And I'm sure she is absolutely smiling down that you not only kept the promise, but you are clearly a winner. So she was right.
Thank you.
I love it. So before we go, I'd like to ask all of my guests one final question, and that's about the power of a vision board. I am a very big believer. I keep mine right next to me. Here you can see I have Oprah.
Yep.
I'm not playing around of who I have on my vision board.
Yeah, exactly.
If we got to peek onto your vision board, what would we see? Who would
So that's interesting. That's interesting that you say that, because I actually have a vision board.
I love
so
it.
I can go grab it.
Go grab
if you
it.
Want.
Yes. Perfect.
So the reason I have a vision board is because I work with PR pageant coaches. I'm not sure if you're familiar with them, but they have their girls do vision boards, and they're very much into team building and visualizing what your goals are. So I have a vision board, okay, and we have a crown up here, all right, because, you know, the goal is that next step in getting that higher title. But also I have rewriting the rules, because I believe in rewriting the status quo and challenging social standards and status quos. And then we have just beauty and fashion, women of all different ethnicities, because I believe in inclusion and representation as well. And I have a smile down here because I went through actually a teeth journey too. And just it represents all my ambitions and, you know, the things I've been through and where I'm headed. And it says boss down here because your girl's a boss, so.
Really? I mean,
and all women are boss
that
women.
on there. We
exactly.
that. I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for sharing that.
You're welcome.
And for being on the show. It is, again, it's a very interesting and important perspective from a sibling's point of view, and also what you have done in honor of your sisters is really beautiful. So please, everybody, go to Uniquely Me, to her blog. Actually, if you could tell people where or how best to get in contact with you.
Yeah, so to see my blog, it's actually on the link in my bio on my Instagram for now. I'm looking to expand. It's fairly new, but right now that's where you can find it. You can also email me at shannah.weller@yahoo.com, or you can get in contact with my director if you're looking to have me do an event, or contact me to do something as Miss Vermont USA. And his email is gdbpageantproductions@gmail.com. And his name is Glenn. And he orchestrates all of my events and all of my promotions as well. So looking forward to people contacting, reaching out, and just looking forward to promoting CF and just inclusivity, because it's so important nowadays.
Agreed. And keep doing what you're doing. It was
Thank you.
absolutely lovely to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. If you would like to be on the Gamut Network, please email us at talent@gamutmanagement.com and tell us why you'd be a great guest. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel at the Gamut Network, and also follow us on all of our social channels on Gamut Management. Thank you again.
Thank you.